Hey there, welcome to the My Risk Advisor podcast. This podcast is for anyone in the financial planning ecosystem with a focus on life risk insurance. I'm your host, Phil Thompson, Director and Financial Advisor at Sky Wealth, and I've been on a business journey over the last few years going from a struggling holistic advice firm with one staff member, considering packing it all in, to pivot the business now to being one of Australia's leading specialist insurance advice firms with over 7 advisors, 30 team members, and helping hundreds of clients every single year get important insurance cover in place. I am unashamed to say that this podcast is so I can continue to grow and develop as an advisor and a business owner as I interview some incredibly smart individuals. So keep on listening so you can learn alongside me. Okay, welcome to the show. Today I've got a special guest. I've got Ashleigh Campbell, who is an associate advisor at Sky Wealth. Thanks for joining me, Ash.
Hey Phil, how's it going?
Great. So I asked you to come on. I want to understand your journey about the professional year, about your career. So let's just start off. Help me understand your career journey today.
Yeah, so like a lot of people finishing high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I have 2 parents who are accountants, so I went for the safe option and went into uni studying accounting. I got all the way through my accounting degree and had started working with an accounting firm when the Shoes on the Money podcast and My Millennial podcast had started coming out, and I realized that financial advice was an option of a career for me. But at that stage, I'd already had my mindset on completing further studies for accounting. So I stuck with that, committed to it for another 4 years before last year finally making the jump into the financial advice industry. So then I started doing my studies for financial advice.
So you spent another 4 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, you spent another 4 years in accounting, in jail, before finally moving up to the light side.
Yeah. Took me 4 years to get out of accounting, but I finally made it. In 2023, finally made the jump.
Cool. And what was it about it, like listening to those podcasts from Glenn and Victoria? If any advisors don't know them, they're ex-advisors, now basically media moguls, just educating the masses on personal finances. So what was about, their content that kind of drew you towards financial advice?
For me, I've always been a person who wants to have some service in my job and feel like I'm contributing to people, feeling like I'm making a difference. In the type of accounting I was in, it was largely just working for large corporations, so it felt quite detached for me. Whereas hearing about them talk about financial advice, it sounded like a way in which I was going to be able to help individuals every day achieve their goals.
Yeah, awesome. And so you kind of made the decision, hey, I want to work with human beings. I don't want to work with big $100 million, billion-dollar companies and audit their accounting and give them a tick for their financial statements. And so when you started looking into advice, what was your first steps? Were you kind of looking at the different businesses that you wanted to join? Like, help me understand kind of that transition.
So I'm a planner. So when I heard about financial advice in about 2019, I started looking into what would be required to make that journey into financial advice. And also coming from the accounting background, I just assumed there would be a study component, not realizing that the study I was looking at was all relatively new. So the first step for me was working out and planning how I was going to undertake the study requirements. But then I don't know any financial advisors in my life or understand the intricacies of the different types of financial advice. So for me, it was all about reaching out to people on LinkedIn, having a chat to them, find out what inspired them to become financial advisors and just understand the different types of financial advice that were available.
That sounds pretty daunting. Were they receptive to catching up and chatting to you? Or did you find that there was a lot of advisors saying, hey, I don't have time for you, I'm not interested?
Actually, it was incredible. So I started just by stalking people on LinkedIn, observing what they were posting for a little while, and then building up the courage after a little bit of watching to reach out to them. And I am pretty sure about 80% of people actually invited me along to have a coffee with them to have a chat. So I don't know whether or not I was just reaching out to the right people, or from my experience, the financial advice industry has been very friendly and welcoming.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Like when I first joined, there's very rarely people in the advice industry like super precious about how they do stuff and what they do. Most advisors are willing to share. And so to anyone out there who's just starting their career, reach out to anyone. They're like the biggest dogs in the pound, like contact them, reach out to them. There's probably been 2 people in my career, and I ask lots of questions. As you know, Ash, working with me, I ask heaps of questions. I want to learn as much as I can from people, so I reach out to people all the time. There's probably been 2 people in my career who have either been precious about how they do it. They think it's their intellectual property they don't want to share, which I disagree, but respect, that's their opinion. And then there was one other who kind of just didn't feel like they had time. But other than that, my experience has been everyone's willing to just jump on the phone at the very least.
Yeah. Everyone at least had a little chat with me over LinkedIn. A few people didn't have time for the coffee because that's going to take up some time, but everyone was very welcoming and open.
Okay, so you'd started your study before you joined a firm, is that right?
So I had enrolled in my studies and I hadn't found a job yet. I was still working in accounting, but it just so happened that everything timed up so that in March, I started my studies and started a new role. I was willing to take the risk of continuing working in accounting and studying at the same time, but it worked out such that I didn't have to do that.
And what was the first job that you went into? What was the kind of deciding factor? Was it literally just anyone who's willing to take a punt on me, I'll go and get a job with them? Or were you trying to be a bit more specific in terms of the role that you were looking at for your first role?
Yeah, so I was approaching another busy season in accounting and really didn't want to have to go through those 60-hour weeks again. And I didn't have much of an idea of what the different companies did and how there's people that specialize in investing and insurance and that sort of thing. So I just applied for anyone, and except my parameters were that I didn't want to work for a bank or a superannuation fund. I wanted to work for a more independent company. I just, applied and took basically the first offer.
Yeah, cool. And help me understand the thinking around not wanting to work for a bank or a super fund.
I wanted to work for someone who could offer more products, so had access to a larger pool of the market as opposed to working for, say, Commonwealth Bank and only offering Commonwealth Bank products.
I mean, I guess it was a smart move because no banks are in advice anymore, so that makes sense. And I was talking to Laura Kelly, who I did an interview with, probably come out a few weeks ago, if anyone's listening to this now. And I was asking her about her journey. She's 6 years into her advice journey, and she caught up with coffee with me when she first started, asking about, where should she look as a grad coming out of uni? Should she look at a big corporate or a small business? My recommendation was go to a small business. You'll see kind of the broader breadth of advice and what it looks like. And she did the complete opposite because she thought, why would I listen to this peanut? I'll do my own thing. And she went into the banks and had a good experience and understood, there's plenty of benefits in either way. So in terms of, moving forward, you've now joined Sky a few months ago. What was the decision making to either join Sky or even, other firms that you were looking at? What was the kind of thing that you were looking to achieve?
Yeah, so my first role just didn't feel like the right sort of fit for me culturally in terms of the workspace, and having exposure already to a few different workspaces and managers and that sort of thing. I had an idea of the type of people I wanted to be working with and the environment I wanted to be in. And I'd come to learn that that was at the forefront of what I wanted in a workplace, was a good fun culture and people that I connected with. And so that was the main sort of factor that I was taking into consideration with my new role. I also wanted to make sure that where I was working, they had experience taking at least one person through the professional year before, and that they were willing to embark on the professional year with me, understanding that it was important to me to make sure that I was being set up appropriately so that when I did get to the end of the professional year, I was going to be able to provide the best advice that I can.
So you came and joined Sky, and that's why we're talking today. One thing I really wanted to get you on is because sometimes when you interview people, it's always one side of the story. And I do like to be able to have a chat and talk about, okay, as someone who owns a business and putting people through PY, we can kind of talk about, okay, what do we do? And before we started recording, I want you to be as candid and honest as possible. I don't want you to kind of
talk Sky up at all. And so I guess what was the initial concern? So Sky, we're insurance only. That's all we do. What was your concerns joining a specialist business, and what was kind of the reason you did decide to come and join us?
Yeah, there definitely was a fear of joining specialist business. Being so early on into experiencing the financial advice world, I wasn't sure if specializing straight away was going to be the best decision for me. But after talking to a few people, I came to the decision that even if in the future I did want to broaden my horizons again, I would be more competitive by having a strong background in risk that I could bring with me to any future roles if need be. And there's so much to learn in financial advice as well, so it's nice to get abroad. I decided also that specializing is going to be good because there's so much to learn in your first few years. So why not get a really good understanding of one thing and get as good in it as possible to begin with?
And that was the kind of the driving reason you joined Sky? What was the reason?
I had been interviewing with a couple of other places and those interviews fell through, and I had had enough with where I currently was. So I took a punt and decided to give it a go.
Got it. Yeah, cool. I said be candid and I didn't say be hurtful. So just to recap, so you took the job at Sky because the jobs you wanted didn't offer you a position and you thought, I'm so desperate to get out, I'll go with this scumbag Sky company. Is that a fair, read of the situation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
No, I definitely didn't think it was going to be a worse off position.
Look, we're glad you're here, even if we are the bridesmaids. Not even the bridesmaids. We're like the flower girls of your career path, but that's okay. Maybe one day we could be the bride in your eyes. So I guess, you joined Sky, and just for the listeners, from our point of view, we thought you would start your professional year kind of within 6 months of joining or 12 months of joining our business. And so that was kind of our thinking. But you came and you joined and you did some work, and we started your professional year much earlier. So there's a few reasons from our point of view why we did it. We think you're very capable, smart, intelligent, and you were able to start your professional year. The other reason is we had two others who were coming through the process. And so we thought, we think you're capable and we've got two others going through it. So we may as well put you all through the same kind of pathway together. So help me understand that conversation when me and Trent said to you, hey, what about starting the professional year as soon as possible?
Yeah, because the whole interview process was talking about how, oh yeah, we'll probably get you started in a few months. Sounds like you're not ready. That's okay. We'll just get you started working here and then we'll look at starting you in the professional year in 3 to 6 months' time. And then all of a sudden I'm starting to do the work and I notice the other two that I've started with, I'm at the same stage as them and I'm progressing exactly the same as them. And then you both came to all of us and said, hey, you're all starting a professional year at the same time. And I thought, well, didn't think I was ready, but at the same time, it's nice to work for someone that can see that I am ready and is pushing me further and faster than I might have done myself.
I mean, I hope we asked your opinion. I believe we did, but we definitely saw that you were capable. And to be honest, as I said, the reason I wanted to get you on is to talk about our point of view and what we saw. One thing as an employer, and when you're developing staff and growing team members, the thing that I value the most and have a lot of respect for is, and we talk about at Sky, there's 3 things we want to see in a team member: humble, hungry, and smart. And so being humble is actually a really big key to seeing someone grow and develop is how willing are they to ask questions. Like if you ask questions, like incessantly ask questions and are constantly wanting to learn and understand, then you're going to be so much better off. And so that's one thing that we saw, that you were always willing to ask questions. Now, if you ask the same questions 10 times, that gets a bit annoying because you should retain some knowledge. But you weren't asking the same questions. So you're always hungry to understand and being humble, going, hey, I don't know what I don't know, so I'm going to reach out and ask for the support. And that helps us give me and Trent confidence. Hey, you will be a great advisor because you don't think you know everything and you just constantly ask questions. And for me, I've been advising for a number of years. I still ask many questions. I still read PDSs. I still geek out over this stuff. So it's really important that you ask questions. So anyone out there who's thinking about starting their professional year, understand that reaching out and asking for support is a real positive. And I was talking to Laura Kelly the other day, and she did the same thing. She reached out and had coffees with people. And that just shows a willingness to learn and grow and develop as in your career. So there is no question there. That's kind of why we said, hey, start your professional year. And it really felt like it worked having all three of you do it at the same time. So in our business, so we've got two who are fully remote, and you're in the office one day a week. And so it's kind of a bit of an experiment for Sky. We've been fully remote forever. Do you feel like there's any learning and growth development opportunities being in an office that maybe the, Amy and Kiara don't get the opportunity to get? Or do you feel like it's the same, doesn't actually have a big impact?
I think it would be a very different answer if a larger proportion were in the office compared to it just being the four of us that come in, just because of the conversations that you're overhearing. The conversations overhearing happens all over Discord. You decide whether or not you're going to read the message and learn from it. So Kiara and Amy aren't missing out in that regard. But coming in on the Mondays, there's still conversations that I'm overhearing and learning from, and getting to ask questions a little bit quicker on that day that probably helped me out a little bit more than Amy and Kiara. But for the most part, I wouldn't say it's a significant advantage or disadvantage either way.
Yeah. And that's kind of my response when people ask about that. Is it good for your career development? I think about, as long as the business is virtual first and communication is always in that environment, then you never feel like you're trapped out of the ability to gain knowledge and learn and grow. But it is something that, we talk about, and Trent talk about a lot as we bring on associates. What is the best way we can educate and empower them to be the best advisor they can be? Is virtual okay? Does it still work or not?
Coming into the office definitely helps build that extra relationship and familiarity level with you and Trent that the other two don't get. But as you said, there's so much conversation happening on Discord that you're not missing out on the education side of things.
Okay, let's move into the actual professional year. Requirements, what does it look like at Sky?
Yeah, so we're using a PY manager to help track our hours and that sort of thing. So that started off with us getting an email saying, hey, you're now starting your PY. And then we had to log in and create a bit of a log about what our plan was going to be. That's a requirement for the professional year, that you have a plan to start off with. We were hoping to get a bit more guidance with what was expected of this plan from Trent and Phil, but for both of them, it's a new experience. So we all just worked together to write up what this initial plan was going to be. And then from there, it was a matter of the plan being approved and then starting with our logging. We're in the second quarter now, and the first quarter was just watching some meetings with that other advisors were holding, and then preparing the advice for preparing the needs analysis and the quotes for the advice.
And saying you hoped for a better plan, what did that actually look like? Like, what was the expectation that you had, and what could we have done better?
Yeah, so what happened was Tal said, hey, come along to this intro to PY manager. And we went along, and in the end, it was just them trying to sell their product, which was a bit silly because we're already using it and I'm pretty sure it's a free product. So we didn't get much benefit from that experience. And then we went to go start working out how to write in our plan. The expectations weren't very clear for what was expected to be written in this plan, because Trent's a very relaxed, laid-back guy. He said, I'm sure whatever you do will be fine.
Yeah, and it is funny. And the thing when it comes to professional year, it's a fairly new thing. Like this PY manager by Tao, they've invested a bit of money into developing it, and it is very helpful, especially for anyone who needs to go through it or is going through it. It helps kind of track all your professional development. You can do your log there. So this will be we've done 5 professional years, including the 3 that we're currently doing. The 2 prior to this, Azaria was the number 1, and that was just a fun experience. It literally professionally just came out and she just started with us, and it was like, and we were licensed externally as well. So there was a lot of hiccups. They didn't understand, our licensee didn't understand how someone could have a mentor that's not sitting next to them. And so we had to literally go through and explain to our licensee that just because we're remote doesn't mean that they can't join every single client meeting if we want. And so I can tell you this is not perfect, but it's much better than where we've come from in terms of it is a difficult kind of process to go through when it is fairly new, and it's been changing. Like, I mean, even the exams, like to book in your exam, it's just a complete nightmare to get through and understand how to go and do it, given that it started at FASIA and they were their own kind of thing, and now it's moved to Treasury. And professional year has been a bit of a debacle, and it's great that Tau's come in and trying to help out a bit. But in terms of kind of the structure that we've done at Sky, we haven't kind of formalised. I mean, it is formalised for anyone at Treasury listening. It's formalised, of course. Everything's done properly. But we haven't kind of articulated it so well on the system because we were all learning the system and we didn't know exactly how to use it. But in terms of the actual development and growth trajectory that you've had at Sky, how has that experience been in terms of your knowledge and gaining understanding about the advice process and developing and growing to become an advisor?
Yeah, because us three are sort of going through the process together and Guy's still finding its feet on how the process is going to be formalized going into the future. It has felt a bit exploratory. I felt I've been learning really well along the process, despite not knowing what is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. It still felt like the progress has been well thought out, and we've started quite slowly, made sure that we understand what we're doing before moving on to the next step. So we started off by looking at the needs analysis for clients and then producing quotes and then observing meetings. And now we've just started coming in and doing a little bit of the presenting of the advice ourselves, building up as we feel comfortable, so that by Q3, we are in a really good position.
Yeah, so Q3 will start in October for some of you, and I guess, looking back at we're not even halfway through the professional year, but is there anything that you feel like Sky has underdeveloped you to this point where you're not ready, or is there anything that we feel like, hey, I'm kind of further ahead than I thought I would be?
I'm definitely further ahead than I thought I would be, largely because when we were interviewing 4 months ago, the expectations for me that I probably wouldn't have even started by now. And then I am nearly at the stage where I can, with a supervisor, present the whole advice, which is so much quicker than I would have expected. And I think largely that comes down to the fact that Sky is high volume. And so it means that I've been able to watch advisors around 3 times a week just to learn and grow from how they're doing their presenting and then getting to practice at quite high volume too.
And just to dial down on that, when you say I'm further ahead than I thought I would be because of the interview, we all came in with the expectation that you'd start later. Is that viewed as a positive or a negative?
For me, it's a positive. I'm excited to get started on my career, not to say to rush it, but to, get through it quicker is exciting for me.
Just want to double check that we're all on the same page as it is a positive. And that's where, our philosophy at Sky is about going, at the end of the day, what is advice and what will help develop an advisor the best? It's actually the technical competency is like the ticket to the game. Everyone needs to be technically competent to provide appropriate advice to their clients. Relatively straightforward. Like a lot of, and not just because we're in insurance only, like the more specialist you are, it actually becomes like the technical competencies are much higher in terms of your requirements. You've got to be a much better understanding of insurance. It's not just simply just plug in a needs analysis, whoever's the cheapest insurer, let's go ahead with that. What is advice in my view is actually this soft skills. We actually, in our business, we rank our advisors. So we provide feedback in terms of the soft skills. So we've got like 8 different things. And you guys as the associates did that rankings with the advisors as well to kind of give your take on how each of our advisors are assessing their soft skills. But it's things like, how well are you at empathizing with the client's, situation? Like that's super important. How good are you at managing conflicts? Clients may not want to go ahead with something, and that's okay. But, is it just a matter of because they don't understand? I mean, is that the reason why? Well, they maybe get frustrated that the premiums are too high. And so it's about, as advisors, managing the conflict. And one thing I remember one of my good friends talking to me about this, James O'Reilly from Northeast Wealth, I was saying, sometimes it can be a bit of I don't know if I'm giving our associates a disservice by coming into a specialist firm. And he just looked at me and he's like, you're an idiot. What are you talking about? You're giving them the opportunity to see, 4, 5, 6 clients a week and sit in front of those clients and deliver advice. And really, advice is all about those soft skills. And so that's the benefit of being in a kind of a higher volume type of business and a growing business. Is that something that you agree with, disagree with? Am I, on this island on my own thinking that we're doing good, but maybe we're not?
No, not at all. I was actually reflecting on this with Kiara exactly this time last week about how the firm that I had come from previous to this was saying, we'd really like for you to stay. We're planning on building up our younger client base. We really wanted you to work on them. And in my head, I was thinking that's probably going to look like 1 client a month compared to the volume of having access to upwards of 10 meetings that we can go and observe each week. I think it is a major benefit to have experience to such a high volume.
And let's touch on the exam. How was the exam? How was the experience?
The exam is just the strangest exam that I have done. And so for context, I have a bachelor's degree, chartered accountant's graduate diploma, and this financial planning graduate diploma. And that was the strangest test I've ever taken in my life. It's really hard to know whether or not you've prepared enough or in the right way. And then you finish it and you're still not sure which way the coin's going to flip. And after I finished the exam, all I was thinking to myself was, I really hope I pass this because I'm not actually sure what I can do differently next time if I don't pass. And then the results come around. You don't know when they're going to come around. They tell you 4 to 6 weeks. I think we got ours back on exactly the 4-week mark, which was nice. And you log into the portal and it just says pass or failed. Luckily for me, it said pass, but there's no context for what that pass looks like or if there were certain sections that I should probably think about developing. It's just a pass.
Yeah, it is strange. And there is, I don't know, a part of my thinking is I wonder, when it first came out, they used to produce the fail rate. When the first 2 years of the exams, they would always produce 80% passed or 60% passed. And my gut feel is I reckon it's gotten heaps harder than it was at the very beginning. There are really capable individuals who have failed the exam. But I remember when I did it, and that was my advice to you guys is, it's fine. It's not that hard. It's it's relatively straightforward. It's the ethical questions and it's,
Until you found out how much it cost.
Oh, yeah, until I found out how much it cost, which is obscene. But I think it's gotten harder. And as you said, you walked out not even having a clue if you passed or failed. That's pretty, it's not great experience. And if you do fail, you've got no context of what you need to improve or how you can do it better. It's a really poor experience and not a great service to the advice community, having this kind of really important exam that means, hey, if you get the green light, you can keep doing your professionally. If you don't, then you've got to wait another 3 months to resit it. It's kind of crazy to me that the way it's structured, but that's okay. It's I'm not the one fixing these things. And so I guess one question I have for you, and it's a little bit of a loaded question, and as I said, I think you've been fairly candid in this interview, which has been really good, exactly what I wanted. But the question about there is a perception where you work in a high volume business that can be very cookie cutter kind of advice. And so I guess, was that your concern coming into a higher volume specialist business, that it may be cookie cutter advice and you may not be developing?
No, my only concern was that I was not going to have access to a broad enough scope of experience compared to what I initially had in my mind for what I wanted for financial advice. So when I was first hearing about financial advice, I sort of came up with this picture for myself of what it would look like. And I presumed it would be talking to younger people, which sky is a tick, but then more so around the cash flow side of things, the things that are more of a problem for younger clients. So cash flow, mortgage, investing, just setting up your financial foundation. So that was the concerns for me, was trying to work out the initial picture that I had in mind, something that I wanted to keep pursuing, or should I see what specializing with Sky is going to look like instead?
And yeah, again, this may sound like the one bad thing about interviewing people who work at Sky is you can ask about their future career and they can get a bit cagey. So I'm going to ask you a question about your future career. Is that something that, hey, once I tick the box as specialist and get those soft skills nailed because of the volume of client meetings I can do over the next X amount of years, is that an area that, hey, I really want to explore those other areas of advice in the future?
I wouldn't say it's a really want to. It's a get to that stage, see how my experience is sitting, see what my lifestyle is saying if I do want to change. It's something that I like to keep as many pages available as possible, but without closing any doors. But at the same time, I'm really happy here. I could see myself staying here for a very long time, but at the same time, I could equally see myself moving in 5 years' time. Who knows? And
I kind of laugh because I can imagine listeners going, that's a really weird question to ask because no one's going to answer, no, I'm out of here in a year's time. But I hope we've had enough candid conversations where, I'm not very precious. I understand that we may be a stepping stone on someone's career journey. We may be their long-term home, and we're totally comfortable and confident in our own ability to retain staff if we're the right place, or for them to move on, and we do not get precious at all about any of that stuff.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to start my career in accounting where those sorts of questions are commonly asked, because the public accounting world is such that it is well known to be stepping stone situations. So having someone ask me a question like that, especially the boss, isn't a completely rare or new experience for me.
Yeah, cool. And so I guess the last few questions. I mean, one thing I've just started reading Diaries of the CEO, and have you read it?
No, but there were billboards all up and down my suburb for it.
Yeah, I've literally just started it, but it talks about like these at the very beginning. It talks about like these 5 buckets in your career and what you should be focusing on, and you need to make sure you're doing it in order. Number 1 is knowledge, so gaining knowledge. Number 2 is gaining skills. Number 3 is building out your network. 4 is resources. And 5 is reputation, and making sure that, if you try and skip the steps and go straight to resources, then you may be, undercooking your ability to gain knowledge and develop your skills. And it's an interesting read. And as I said, I'm just at the start, but I guess that's kind of the way I think about our career, because we want to grow and develop young advisors and give them an opportunity to see a lot of clients and be able to experience it. But I guess that's kind of one other question, and coming back to that kind of ethical consideration, being in a specialist firm or an insurance only firm, and that concern about cookie cutter advice. Like, were you concerned about like a sales culture or a concern about this? The client's always first, but in reality, we're trying to do what's best for our business.
Yeah, that is something that someone who thought about that sort of thing would have been concerned about. But for me, I was in this bit of fairy tale world where I'm like, I don't want to be going into it with a sales mindset. So why would anyone else be wanting to go into it with a sales mindset? I was a bit delusional.
But now you're at Sky. Is that something that, I guess what I'm trying to ask you, is that like a concern that you feel like, and we can cut this out of the recording if you say something really bad or you don't want to tarnish our reputation. But it's a legitimate question I have for you is do you feel like that is an area that we could do better at, is being more client focused, I guess?
Sky doesn't feel salesy to me. Just because you have processes and the processes are largely the same for each person, still in the way you're interacting with someone when you are having those phone calls and the Zoom call, it is still personalized, and we are still taking into consideration the information that they're telling us about them. So I understand why you might have concerns that it is salesy or too cookie cuttery, but I think there's great benefit in having robust processes.
And I think that's the thing that I think about a lot. I mean, The reason I'm genuinely asking is because as human beings, we can kind of drift to our way of thinking in the past is always right. And the older I get, the wider I get, and the more male I get, the more I fear I will become that old, stodgy, this is the way we've always done it. And we're ethically okay, but, we're leaning in towards kind of concerning areas. And the reason why I legitimately ask is because I always want to surround myself with people who will go, hey, hold on, I don't think we're doing the right thing for the client. We should be doing A, B, and C. My biggest gripe with the advice industry is one advisor will look at someone's advice and then point the finger and say they're a mug and they're a scumbag, instead of just asking, well, why, how do they come up with that? What was their philosophy? But also, I do believe there are poor practices, and there have been poor practices, and I want to make sure it's got, we do sell a product. At the end of the day, people come to us because they want insurance. We get paid to sell that product. So how do we balance that? Always putting the client's best interest at first, but knowing there's a commercial reality that we need to be in business to keep serving those clients. So that's why I asked the question. And again, it's a loaded question, but I do want to legitimately keep asking, hey, are we doing the right thing by the clients? And because, what was it, 2 days ago, on Monday, I said to you kind of flippantly, hey, what do we want the client to do? And then let's make the advice kind of fit that. And I said it flippantly. And then the next day I was thinking about it, I was like, I need to clarify my intention was, what do we think is in the best interest of the client? And then, how do we come up with that conclusion in the advice document?
Exactly.
And so I literally came back to you and tried to clarify that, because I was like, I need to make sure it doesn't creep into this assumption that we're just trying to do what we think is the way.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in me, though, personally, to always try to be thinking about what actually is going to be the best outcome for the person that I'm doing the work for. That flippant comment that you made didn't, seep into me and cause a ethical dilemma.
Well, yeah, and you're going through your professional year. You got to do ethical dilemmas at the end of your professional year as well. So it is, and it's interesting. It's also understanding the people, if you're in a job and you have any questions about, are we doing the right thing, be comfortable asking the question and pushing back. And as advisors, whether you're a business owner or not, you should be comfortable with someone just being inquisitive, and maybe don't be accusatory, but just be inquisitive. Hey, how do we get to this? If you're feeling uncomfortable, just seek first to understand before you make any judgment. And that's kind of, again, I love it when our team asks questions, why are we doing this? Or should we be doing this? It's like I have a much higher level of respect for team members who question the way we do it and our assumptions, because, as I said, I fear I'm becoming that old business owner who doesn't ever change.
It is clearly a very big fear that drives you, considering we have a whole channel in Discord just for discussing business improvements, making sure that Sky is always going to be changing for the better.
I was telling one of our team members the other day that I said every time she was mentioning, we could do this improvement, she always prefaced it by, we're doing really good and this is amazing. And it's like, just shut up. Don't tell me that we're doing something good. Just tell me what we can improve. That's all I want to hear about.
Yeah, you don't like compliments.
Yeah, well, that's true. I've asked you about 75 things that didn't end in a question, so apologies. It's kind of been a little bit ranty on my end. But what's your advice to anyone who is either going through their professional year or considering joining a firm to start their professional year?
If you're in the position that I was a couple of years ago, considering about joining a firm, start interacting. LinkedIn is so active with people in the financial advice world. Reach out, gain as much knowledge as you can about what the process is going to be. And then when you are starting your professional year, find a firm that is going to support you, is as excited to get you through it as Guy is about getting us through it. And then when you are in that stage, just know that it's a great opportunity to learn as much as you can and ask heaps of questions. Stay curious.
How do you actually know if the business is going to do what they say they're going to do?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really hard one to judge, but generally, if you have started working there and it's been a couple of months, generally a couple of months is all it takes to work out if they've been feeding you empty promises. Some advice I got at the beginning of starting my advice was to not stay anywhere much longer than I had to if it was clear that it wasn't the right place for me. Sometimes it can take a few goes to find the right place for you in advice. So don't be afraid to move on as soon as your gut is telling you it's time to go.
Yeah, it's good advice. And I guess the other thing is just talk to other team members, ask the question, hey, is there any examples of the leaders in the business kind of over-promising and under-delivering, and maybe say it in a better way and in a less accusatory way. But is that something that you did? Did you reach out to and talk to any of the team members at Sky before you started here?
No. Well, Azari had actually reached out to me initially, and I'd already seen her on some podcasts from when she was at uni. So to me, she felt like a very credible source. And if she was working with you, then I felt that I could trust what Sky was like as a business.
And again, I've got so many questions for you, but is there any areas that we've overpromised and underdelivered?
Overpromised? No, I really don't think so.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that.
And I think that's just because the expectations were set relatively low from the beginning.
And was that something you wanted? You were comfortable with? You understood, hey, I am further behind and I'm comfortable starting back there.
Yeah, absolutely. I probably said that a few times in my interview.
Awesome. Well, I've got 2 last questions for you. When do you get a chance to do your emails?
I'm a throughout the day kind of person. I start with an empty inbox in the morning and then end with an empty inbox by the time I log off.
Love it. I can't wait till you're advising clients and you've got 1 million questions in your inbox.
Yeah.
And I hope that stays. That's my hope for you. And what is one interesting hobby that you have?
I go to yoga about 4 to 6 times a week in the morning at about 6 a.m. I find it a really nice way to start my day.
Like a psychopath. Oh my goodness. And in our advisor retreat, Ash ran our yoga session, which was good. Me, Trent, Amy. Was there anyone else? It was just us 3.
Matt came along one
Oh,
time.
Matt was there. That's right. That was fun. So thank you very much. And it's been great interviewing you. I basically, every Monday I interview you anyway. I ask you 1 million questions, but it's been good to get this on. And how do people reach out to you if they want to try and poach you away from Sky and they reckon you're an awesome fit for their business? How do they reach out to you and poach you? Or if they're doing their profession here or wanting to, how do they get in contact and ask you questions and go out for coffee with you?
Yeah, have a look for me on LinkedIn. That's about the only social media that I spend much time on, but probably type in that I work at Sky because Ashleigh Campbell is quite a common name. It makes me a little bit more difficult to find.
Awesome, Ash. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and you're doing a great job in your actual work as well.
Thanks, Phil.
All right, cool. Thank you all.
If you've enjoyed this episode and you think someone else will get value out of it, I'd love it if you could forward it on to them. And as always, we can continue the conversation in the My Risk Advisor Facebook group. All you need to do, open up Facebook and search My Risk Advisor, and I'll see you in there.